Rachel,
And I'm Amanda.
and this is episode 4 of Books and Bingos. This week, we're recommending books with floral covers to celebrate the spring weather. So, Amanda, floral covers are kind of a book trend we're seeing a lot of. I feel like it was not hard to find books for this week. Have you noticed any other book trends lately?
No, but I feel like you're so right. The spring vibes are out right now, and I have been seeing a lot. Well, today's actually Earth Day when we're recording this, so I have seen a lot of things with trees and nature and all that kind of stuff. So I'm excited that we're recording this one today.
I feel like what I'm seeing so far in 2024 is like neon colors. A lot of
Oh,
neons, especially like neon pinks, very like 90s vibe. So I'm excited for it.
oh
Uh,
yeah.
but today we are talking flower covers. So Amanda, go ahead and tell us about your first pick.
So it's so funny that this is the one I ended up choosing first because actually Rachel recommended this to me for one of my 24 to read in 2024. And I was going on a trip and I was like, okay, fantasy, Amanda, you can do it because fantasy is not one of my go-to genres. This one is actually a YA romantasy. That's another trend we're seeing a lot of in publishing is this new genre of having a lot of fantasy books that have a strong romance in them. So the first one I chose was A Curse So Dark and Lonely by Brigid Kemmerer. This one is not like a newer, all three books are out. So if you are looking for a completed trilogy, this one is going to be it. It is the first in the series. The cover is stunning. And obviously, so many of these that have the floral covers are very, very striking and perfect for this genre. It is a Beauty and the Beast retelling. So if you are a fan of fairy tale retellings, this one is it, but it has a little bit of a twist with it. I will say that if you're a fan of A Court of Thorns and Roses, that this one is going to be your YA choice. It is definitely young adult. It is not new adult or adult as ACOTAR has been moved to. So this one firmly sits in that 14 and up category. There is a potential love triangle situation, one that I actually have lots of thoughts on. So if you have read it, please reach out to me because I want to discuss it. And like with most trilogies, there is a cliffhanger ending, but I love that all three books are out now. So you can hop right into the next one whenever you're ready. I am on hold for mine, so I can read it next. And then it has great cerebral palsy representation. The main female character has cerebral palsy and is still one of the strongest characters I've read and been able to take it out of this world that she's known, the city in Washington, D.C., I believe, and then thrust back into this sort of medieval time and handles it with grace and aplomb. So I love that our main character has that representation. I will say some of the trigger content warnings are going to be ableism, parental death, cancer, blood, violence, injury, fire, suicide ideation, murder, death, war, and chronic illness. This one works for young adult, fantasy, series, and romance.
I'm so glad you liked that one. I really enjoyed it too. I don't tend to go a lot towards fairy tale retellings, even though I love Beauty and the Beast. But I read this one as a potential for our high school book club, and I absolutely loved it. I loved how feisty our main character was. I've only read the first one, so I'll have to catch up with you and read the second and third so we can chat about it for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I am so excited to see how it ends up finishing out with the love interest and then also just the story in general.
Absolutely, absolutely. My first pick is Pride and Premeditation by Tirzah Price. Speaking of retellings, this is a Pride and Prejudice retelling. Pride and Prejudice is my literal favorite book ever, so I'm very harsh on retelling. So I call this really more of like a remix because we're not getting the same exact plot line of Pride and Prejudice. We're getting the characters set in a different situation, which is really fun. So it is in the same time period, roughly. Like I said, the same characters, but they're set amongst a murder mystery. And our poor Mr. Bingley is the one that has been accused of the crime. And we all know Bingley didn't kill anybody. So our Miss Elizabeth Elizabeth has to solve the crime and clear his name. And I absolutely love this one. This was my favorite book I read the year this came out. Love it. This series does continue with other Jane Austen books. There's Sense and Sensibility is Sense and Second Degree Murder, I think. And then Mansfield Park becomes Manslaughter Park. And I've just started seeing ads for another book in the Darcy Elizabeth realm. So I'm super excited to see that. I think it's coming out late in the year though, but yes, I'm super excited for that one. So this would be good for YA, historical, a series, and I think that's all for that one.
I actually read this one because of you. You had been talking it up really big and I loved it. And so I'm also not one big for, I don't go for if it's a retelling, but this one, just the title, the premise, the cover, everything worked in this one. And I absolutely loved it. I read all three. They're fabulous. So it's funny because I had read a couple of other ones that had flower covers, but I just wasn't ready to gush about them. And I feel like if they're going to make it on our podcast, I want to gush about them. So I actually cheated a little bit and I read this one actually for National Poetry Month. It is Not Hungry by Karyus Quinn. And it's one that I'd had in my library that gets checked out all the time. And I always wondered, why? Because it's a novel in verse, which are very popular in a middle school, high school library because of all the white space. The kids like that they can turn the pages really fast. It has a cut right to the chase story. So I was like, okay, it came available. No one had it on hold and I was going to grab it for National Poetry Month. It has a tiny little flower on the cake on the book. So it counts.
It counts.
But I was actually I sat down and read it in one sitting. It is one that you don't need a whole lot of time for, but it is very compelling. It is the first book in a duology about the main character, June, who is a high schooler that is struggling with her weight. And as someone myself has grown up in that a similar situation with always constantly thinking about my weight, struggling with my weight, having all different kinds of issues revolving around body image, it was very relatable. And this story just really resonated with me. And then I ended up reading the second one and I loved the way that the author was able to continue June's story. So just be very careful though, if you are diving into this one, it is going to be dealing with disordered eating, fat shaming, fat phobia, abusive relationships. The character does binge and purge situation a few times and unwanted touch. So it does have some pretty strong trigger content warnings, but I felt like it was handled very well. In the realm of young adult, it does for me fall on the lower end of young adult because it doesn't have like a whole lot of bad language. It doesn't deal with anything super mature or anything. It's just that this topic in particular, I see a lot with my students. And so it really made sense to me why it's one of the more popular ones, because even if they may not be dealing with it themselves, they may have a friend or someone that is, and they're able to see the signs, because I feel like that's something that it really does address well, that June was able to hide so much of what she went through because she didn't want anyone to know how bad it was. And so it was just a really great book that deals with, not just body shaming, but also mental health. And this one would work well for our young adult square on the bingo or realistic fiction.
Wonderful pick for Poetry Month, Amanda. My second pick is called Marple, 12 New Mysteries by various authors. So basically what they did is they took the character of Miss Marple and they've allowed some popular modern day mystery writers to take a crack at writing a short story for her. Some of the authors include Ruth Ware, Karen McManus, Lucy Foley, Lee Bardugo. And as with all short story collections that you see, you're going to love some and kind of feel meh about some. That's just how short story collections go. But I really enjoyed this. It was so fun to see these modern authors working a story through a character from like the 40s. It was just a really interesting way to do it. And of course, they got to bring in a little bit more diversity to an Agatha Christie story or Agatha Christie character. So that was a lot of fun to see. If you get into this one, I would love to compare notes on which story was your favorite. I'd love to hear it. Nothing really stood out to me for content warnings other than, general murder mystery stuff that you come across. This would work well for mystery series, historical, or realistic.
Is that a recent release? Because I have not heard of this one at all.
It is fairly recent. I think it came out either last year or the year before, like the last couple of years.
Awesome. I'm going to have to check that one out because I love all of those authors. So that's
Yes,
amazing.
it was very fun. And those are our recommendations for the week. If you would like to share your recommendations or request a theme to be highlighted in a future show, reach out on social media at Books and Bingos or email us at booksandbingos@gmail.com. Thanks for listening and join us again next week for new titles coming in May. Happy reading!